Okay, welcome back to The Wheel Breakers. This is a Game of Thrones podcast given to you by the good folks at The Real World. Enter therealworld.com. 2 E's in real, decided by Mike Thomas. Mike, how are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Very well. You sound a little bit groggy, but I will believe you that you are doing very well.
I did not play basketball for 3 hours this morning, so
okay.
I should be more physically fit to perform this podcast.
It's very cold and wet outside in the UK, so my time playing basketball is minimal.
Oh, it's cold and wet. It must be every day.
Massive heat wave last year when we did those Matrix podcasts. But anyway, Season 5 of Game of Thrones, a noticeable decline feels harsh, but it's not what
Dip.
Yeah, a dip. There you go. There are still some very, very high moments here. Interestingly, this is what exact award did this win for the first time? Outstanding
This was the
drama?
first time they won the main event of the Emmys every year, the Outstanding Drama category.
It seems a weird season.
And they've won it every
that.
time they've had a show since.
Ah.
Yeah, I mean, it happens. Sopranos didn't win it until season 5 because the Emmys had a massive hard-on from the West Wing.
Of course.
I mean, I think, generally speaking, you could sum up a warm awards commentary with, well, they should probably wait 5 to 10 years before they decide what was the best thing of that particular year. And that kind of ends any required conversation about it. But it did seem like it was kind of just a perfect storm of Mad Men ending, Breaking Bad ending, or at least being in their tail runs with Mad Men. The field opened up, so to speak.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we've agreed the first 4 seasons are the best 4 seasons, and then Season 5 is the first one to win that award, so kind of strange. It may be that, as you have said, I mean, the stuff you just said, obviously I don't want to completely undercut that, but you've made the point before how they get better at making the show as time goes on, so maybe some of the production quality getting better also influenced that outstanding drama win. But after a rewatch this last week, I wouldn't say there's anything like phenomenal here that made it suddenly deserve praise. I mean, Hard Home is a pretty impressive scene, but like, I think it's more what you were saying, like those big shows coming to an end. There's like a weird pacing thing going on with this season. There's a lot of episodes where, there's one in particular where your standard structure for a Game of Thrones episode, you move from plot point A, character A to B to C to D, so on and so forth. In this one, you get a lot of A, B, A, B.A. The one I'm really thinking of is like the High Sparrow and Tommen, and I don't know, like, and you get like Olenna being on the road, and then she's talking to Marjorie, and then she's talking to Cersei. It just doesn't move in the way that Game of Thrones traditionally moves, and I felt some of the pacing in this season was a little bit strange compared to previous ones. I don't know if they had a new influx of directors that just wanted to do different stuff, but
I think this is connected. Both these first points we brought up are connected to a big change in the show, which was, season 1 basically followed book 1. Season 2 followed book 2, and then seasons 3 and seasons 4 followed book 3 for the most part. Although we talked about the adaptations in 4.
Sure.
Season 5 is combining books 4 and 5.
Yes.
Which one, I always think it's kind of very fitting that 3 is so good and so massive it gets 2 seasons, and 4 and 5 are so mediocre and empty that they get combined into 1.
Wow. They're ditching a whole bunch of characters in order to, like, they're just taking the big characters from each of those books.
Yes, but like it's not like they cut some of
my favorite stuff.
There's enough content in book 4 and book 5 to just take the first half of each one, right? And end it at the end of the season.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What I wasn't meaning like, they should have cut off half the cast. What I mean is,
okay, good.
they could have found stopping points for all of them, theoretically.
Absolutely.
But so little happens to everybody in these. We talked about the leftovers effect, where it just kind of feels like after the war ends, it's just kind of like, okay, well, what happens with all these characters while we wait for the zombies to show up and the dragons to grow up? And it feels that way even more so in the books.
Yeah.
And then while the books kind of decide to vastly expand the universe in books 4 and 5, the show begins the process, like kind of teases that out a little bit and then retreats greatly and just decides, nope, that was a terrible idea. We're just sticking to the main cast.
Yeah.
And I think you kind of feel that in this season a little bit, where you're just like, they don't feel confident introducing new characters and new worlds anymore.
No, they don't. Well, you say that, but last episode we talked about how they introduced very few new characters. This season, they do a little bit, but they have very small roles compared to when they've introduced people previously. Like, you get Kevin Lannister, who's Tywin's brother, who shows up for a cup of coffee and then fucks off again. Tristan Martell with I think the third actress to play Marcella. At
least the second.
Yeah, they have a very tiny part. We meet Prince Doran, we meet the Sand Snakes. Arya Hotar barely has a character whatsoever. As you said to me, basically should have just been a background character.
If you didn't know he was a character in the books, you would have no idea that he was anything more than a background character.
Yeah.
He's a POV character in the books.
And I think that hurts because he does a lot. He doesn't actually speak a lot in the book, and you get a lot of his internal monologues, so that makes him cool. But they could have done something more than this.
Yeah.
The High Sparrow and the Waif, I think, are all of our new characters.
And we also return of Jack and Hagar.
Yes. I think it's like hinted that it's him in the book, but it's not confirmed. It's just the man with no face or something.
I'm not going to lie. As you know, I've read all the books. I do not remember Arya's time in the House of Black and White very well.
It's not a banger, is it?
No. I mean, it came across to me is that Jack and Hagar was somewhat of a fan favorite in season 2, and he was very amusing, to be sure. And then you kind of got that more is not more thing, or more is not better thing. And we got 2 more seasons of Jack and Hagar, and I don't know.
Basically a different character, but played by the same actor, it might as well be.
Yeah. I mean, it removed all the parts about him that we found likable, and it kind of just, his characterization seemed to shift based on what the show needed to create, however the show needed to create conflict for Arya in any given episode, let alone season or 2-season arc, which is what it ends up being. I mean, I think there's no way to get around the fact that the show is no longer on the upswing. No. The show is, at the very least, plateauing, if not outright declining at this point in terms of storytelling. I do think, however, the show, as we talked about, I think the showrunners get more competent. In some ways, the show is better made in a way that compensates a little bit for the dip in storytelling.
They're able to bring it with those sort of big moments a few times a season.
Yeah.
Every time. And
the show becomes a lot more about them trying to create big moments from this point forward.
Yeah.
And I would say, in some ways, mostly succeeding. Not always, but mostly succeeding.
But the sort of interconnective tissue becomes a lot less memorable.
Yeah.
It's like, what happened between Jon doing this and Jon doing that? I don't know.
Yeah.
Of those characters they introduced, the only one that's really presented as major is the High Sparrow, I would say, and he isn't even that long for the world. And then, everyone else is quite a small introduction, and you said how they teased getting bigger, but then they shrank. We say farewell to a lot of people this season. Barristan Selmy, Maester Aemon, Mance Rayder, Stannis, Shireen, Selyse, and Jon Snow. More on that later. But yeah, they cut away a lot of characters here, and they'll continue to do that. Like, this cast is shrinking and shrinking. I would be stunned if they introduced anyone new in the last season, to be honest.
Yeah. I don't know. It's very weird from this point forward with the show in terms of... I mean, you know what the thing is when I look back on? Is when I think about season 1, it's like, and season 2, it's like, Jon, like, training at the Night's Watch and dicking around in the snow. Like, theoretically, those things don't really mean anything in the bigger picture, but they didn't frustrate me or feel like a waste of time like things start to feel like in this season. It felt like we were on a journey that meant something to a certain extent, and I don't know why. What's the difference between season 1, where Tyrion's just fucking around for a while and not really connected to the main action? Like, why did that feel less stupid than, like, Arya kind of just fucking around for 2 seasons, or Cersei battling the High Sparrow for 2 seasons? Like, why is it just that it's that point in the show where, okay, enough is enough, like, it's time to get down to business? Or is there something fundamental about the content or the presentation of it that makes it inferior?
I'm not entirely sure. I think those characters had better people to play off earlier when they were fucking around compared to now. Like, Cersei's lost a lot of the people that she used to talk to regularly. Tyrion is he's with Varys, and then he's with Jorah, and then he ends up with Daenerys. And not awful, but it's not as good as...
I don't include Tyrion so much in this season. I think Tyrion's journey this season would feel a lot better with stronger stuff going on elsewhere. His stuff does kind of feel like, okay, can we just get him to Dany already? Like, what's the point?
And, in the book, it takes... He hasn't even reached her, has he?
He has not met Daenerys yet in the books.
Yeah, and I don't hate the young Griff stuff that is completely absent here, but I can see why they would just jettison that and get him there quicker, because Meereen drags on forever. And it seems like they're making a conscious choice to move as many pieces towards her as possible to make her journey less boring. Like putting Varys there, putting Jorah back, getting Tyrion there.
Tyrion, yeah. Listen, I've got a big rant coming at the end of this episode about Varys and Selmy, but I am not complaining that Tyrion got to Meereen by episode 8 or 7. That is not on my complaint list.
Yeah.
It's more just like, I mean, the three things I really think about is how the show post Tywin and pre Dany coming to Westeros basically has 2 seasons to kind of just figure out what the fuck it's going to do.
Yeah, it's not about the Starks anymore. It's about the oncoming White Walkers and the eventual coming of Daenerys, I guess.
And they can't do it yet in season 5.
No.
And they're determined not to do it until season 7, which means they create this kind of 2-season, I would say a part 1 and a part 2 season, which is season 5 and 6, where the 3 big bads are Ramsay, the Waif, and the High Sparrow.
Sure.
I mean, because these are the things they're building to. Cersei versus the Sparrow. Everyone else becomes a supporting player in that, basically. I mean,
but do we call Cersei a hero in that?
That's the problem, though, right? It's hard to care. I mean,
exactly.
Ramsay makes Joffrey seem interesting, as we've talked about. I mean, the Waif is not even a character. She makes Jack and
she doesn't have a name.
Like a character.
She doesn't have a real name. I mean, I guess that's the point, but
yeah, it's just very not good. It's just very not.
It is,
and I mean, I think we're going to start with Cersei. Cersei post Tywin. I think in season 3. Where Tywin says, I don't give you more responsibility. I don't not give you more responsibility because you're a woman, but because you're not nearly as clever as you think you are. And then we get 2 to 3 seasons worth of Tywin being proven completely correct.
Yeah, it's kind of... On the one hand, she's done all these horrible things. She's one of the most hated characters. Everyone wanted to see her get some comeuppance, and I don't want to say it's nice to see her get it, because by the time we get to the Walk of Shame, no one should have to go through that. But on the other hand, the story being she's just not clever is a bit iffy when you look at how they treat women in this show generally. And, she's been one of the more conniving, successful women. But when... this is her father's gone, Joffrey's gone, Tommen is so passive. The board is clear, she can finally just outright run Westeros, and she just completely botches it, and it comes across as she's an idiot. And it's maybe you could have done this a bit differently. And I think they try, because we get here the first flashback the show ever did. You take everything that TV people say with a pinch of salt, like Lost said, oh, they're not in limbo. I think they said early on they would never do a flashback, and they would never do something else. And they do one here with Cersei. As a child, she visited some witch in the woods, and this prophecy she was given has motivated her entire life, and obviously she ends up making it come true for herself with her actions of trying to prevent it. And it's about how she won't wed Prince Rhaegar, she'll wed King Robert. She'll be queen for a time, and then a younger, more beautiful woman will cast her down. The king will have 20 children, she'll have 3. They'll all have golden hair, and they'll all die. And all of these things do come to pass, and, her being the way she is arguably what causes it all. But I don't know, there's just something that bothers me about this idea that Cersei's just too dumb to play the game that Tyrion did in season 2,
Yeah, I think the only way you pull this off is if Cersei's demise comes quickly and suddenly at the end. I mean, I think this is probably closest to what Ned's doing in season 1, where Ned's kind of making a power play from what he believes are selfless motives, but it's kind of all of his actions are power play moves, right? He is actively trying to remove the most powerful family in Westeros. He's really fucking stupid, so he fails, and then his demise ends. I kind of think Cersei needed to go at the end of this season. I literally just put this together right now, so perhaps something will pop up later on that'll make us rethink that. But I think they should have restructured this in a way where Cersei's demise comes at the end of this season, because that's kind of what they do, is they just kind of turn her into this ridiculous cartoon villain from this point forward for the most part. It really drags down
she's the Mad Queen
story.
Isn't she?
Yeah, drags down Jaime's story and makes her a far less nuanced character for the final 2 or what will be 3 seasons, where, I mean, when she finally conquerors over Marjorie, I mean, I'm at the end being like, okay, the show that I started off watching clearly would have recognized that Marjorie was the better character at this point. Marjorie going toe-to-toe with Daenerys would have been far more interesting and far more like, well, who am I rooting for? Like, Daenerys is this evil conqueror. Mm-hmm. Marjorie at least pretends to give a fuck about people.
Yeah. She walks through puddles.
Yeah, I think this is where Cersei should have ended. I've just decided that now.
Potentially,
it would have been. Especially she tries to push Jaime away. She just lost a child. You know, I think it's pretty easy to spin that this is where she gets real reckless and it costs her. And I think you can even make her sympathetic by the end doing it that way.
Well, this is my question, right? So, you know, she goes to the High Sparrow after Marjorie's been like brutally owning her about her age and all this stuff, and she reinstalls the faith militant. The church basically are allowed to have their own army and be the police and everything. Thinking this will get her own sort of private army, she has gravely misunderstood the kind of person the High Sparrow is. It all blows up in her face. She gets imprisoned, and she has to go through this walk of shame naked through the streets, being sworn at, stuff thrown at her. She's bloody, she's being spat on. It's fucking horrible. Was the idea of this walk to make her a sympathetic character, which she arguably, you know, because I mean, you can't erase the bad things she's done by just having her go through this. And she arguably always had these sort of shreds of, as you said, like, she used to be very nuanced. And, like, you'd have these moments where you're like, you know what, she's horrible, but I get it. So were they trying to make her a sympathetic character, or are they just saying, this justifies everything she does after this? Because I don't really like either of those options that much. And I don't like it as a sort of, yeah, she's getting what she deserves, because she doesn't. Because, I mean, I read somewhere, like, this is voted one of the most satisfying moments in Game of Thrones. Like, no, fuck that. Like, fuck that. When she's talking to the High Sparrow and he's talking about all the sort of rich people in King's Landing and the many and the few, it seems like this weird allegory for, like, the 1%, but the Sparrows are very clearly not heroic. Like, they torture and imprison homosexuals, there's violence towards women, there's all kinds of fucked up shit they do. So, well, I mean, who am I rooting for?
Theoretically, the High Sparrow is representing the 99% and not the 1%.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying it's like an allegory for the...
Right. Yeah. I mean, but I think what works about it is historically there's huge patterns of, like, populist movements gone awry, and I think that was a good idea, or a good kernel for an idea, but putting us in a position where we have to root for the Rorschach. It's Rorschach versus Cersei, like, but it's Rorschach that's obviously positioned as evil, so even idiots aren't cheering him on. I mean, I think the only saving grace of this 2-season story with Cersei and the Sparrow is that Jonathan Pryce is really fucking good.
He really
at saying words. He is really fucking good. I mean, when I think about all the two-dimensional stupid characters this show cycles through, I can't believe he was able to pull this off. Honestly, every time I rewatch 5 or 6, I'm just kind of in shock and in awe of how good of an actor Jonathan Pryce is.
Yeah.
Because the words he is given to say and the storyline he is given are just so awful, and he sells it so well that at least it's not unpleasant to sit through. No. Because it's him acting, and he's really, really good at it, and I pretty much enjoy every scene he has in the show for the 2 seasons.
Just this, like, shoeless old man in rags, but, you know, he's so confident, he can switch to sinister, to sort of, I don't know what you're talking about, I'm lovely, or whatever, you know, like, he just nails it, as you said, like... My question another one of my questions with this is, does she learn from this? Is this a thing that informs the way she treats people going forward? In my head, without having seen season 6 and 7 again yet, I'm thinking no, but it's something to keep an eye on. But, like, I guess her lesson is, you know, she's grown up observing politics being done a certain way. She thinks she can buy her way out of everything and manipulate and bribe and all of this, and certain men, they just want to watch the world burn, as Alfred would say. I don't know if anything really changes for her here, except she just gets more ruthless, but, like, she was already pretty fucking ruthless, so...
Yeah, I would just say it strengthens her resolve. I mean, I would be open to the idea that someone says there is a tweak in her presentation, and maybe we'll see it more when we discuss 6.
Yeah, it's something I want us to keep an eye on next episode.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing to keep an eye on going forward, because otherwise it kind of just... I mean... Not only is it annoying to watch as a storyline, Cersei kind of just fucking up and then nothing really happening. Not only is some of the stuff really unpleasant at the end where they walk of shame, but it might just be all just complete waste of time too. Like, even from a character arc standpoint. On the surface, that's kind of how I feel about it, but I'm open to the suggestion that she becomes involved in some manner that shapes the direction of the show after this.
Sure.
Beyond the fact that she just murders everybody. But instead of trying to be clever, she just like murders everybody.
She sure does. Another thing she does.
I guess she murders everybody in a clever way.
That's true. Another thing she does send Jaime to Dorne. Our first time in Dorne, and there's no getting around it. This is one of the most disappointing adaptations of anything from the books. Just massively botching Dorne, making it seem small, making it seem unpopulated. Like when Jaime and Bronn make their way into sort of the heart of Sunspear, and there's fucking nobody around except Tristan and Marcella and some guards. I mean, I guess it's like meant to be like a palace, but you don't see one common folk, as it were. Everyone here is a character from this show, and the Dornish seems stupid, and we're not including a whole bunch of characters from the Dornish story from the book, like Arianne, Eris Oakhart, Balon Swan, Darkstar, the Sand Snakes. I don't want to say they're terrible, but I don't think they're as good as they needed to be to sell this section. It's disappointing because Dorne, you talked about this last week, how they're so unique in that they were the only kingdom not conquered. They are they're feminist. Like in the book, the plan is to make Marcella queen, not kill her, because they respect women's right to rule ahead of, as in because Marcella is older than Tommen, they believe she has a stronger claim to the throne, so they want to crown her queen of Westeros. But that's gone here. It just becomes about Ellaria Sand wanting to kill Marcella out of revenge, and they name an episode after the saying of Dawn, like Unbent, Unbroken, I forget the third one, and in that episode, unbowed, unbent, unbroken. And the Dornish part of that episode is the smallest part of that episode. It's just top to bottom a complete mess, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, they completely fucked us up in every way. It's kind of remarkable. I think if you want to look through look for a silver lining in book 4, it's the introduction of Dorne, because book 4 is a real fucking mess. Jaime spends the entire time with the fucking guy with no tongue, so it's just Jaime's thoughts. Brienne is with Pod, and it's just Brienne's thoughts. It's like, you stop complaining about Brienne running into everybody all the time in the show when you read the book about her not running into anybody relevant ever. Cersei, I would say, became the first character in Game of Thrones who became less interesting once they became a point of view character in the books. I was like, oh, there's even less going on in here than you think. So book 4 is like a total disaster in a lot of ways as a work of literature. But Dorne is this fascinating location full of interesting characters. And the fact is that they're playing 4-dimensional chess and everyone else is playing fucking checkers in terms of the bigger picture of what's going on in this world. And they hinted that here. And I think the idea was that they were teasing it and they were going to expand it until they decide to just cut their losses and kill off everybody. But I think that's I think that was kind of stupid.
Yeah.
I think what really makes that clear is just how long this stupid storyline takes. The meeting where Jaime actually meets with
Dorne?
Yeah. Doesn't happen until like episode 8 or 9.
Yeah.
It's just like the pacing of this storyline in general is just awful.
Like Cersei sends him off in episode 1 or something like that. I think 2 episodes later, him and Bronn easily make their way in. They get captured. We see them in prison very briefly. They have a talk. Off they all go. And then Marcella is poisoned. But it's so small in every way. Like from the physical location to the scope of the storyline, it's just so weak.
It also features, I would say, in the Palace Gardens, or whatever that fucking thing is called, I would say one of the worst action scenes the show's ever done, with Bronn and Jaime versus the Sand Snakes. Like, the length they had to go to not have the Sand Snakes finish them off immediately was just, like, terrible. And for it to come in the same season with quote-unquote, with George's quote-unquote fight scenes. I mean, like, that poor old man, they just sent him out there without any training and just said, just swing it around, man. It's going to look great. We'll fix it in post.
Do a roll!
And then not fix it in post. I mean, in terms of action, I mean, like, obviously we'll talk about one really great action scene they have in this season. And don't get me wrong, it's fantastic. But yeah, I know they're limited somewhat by Jaime's hand thing, but it is, boy, what a disaster.
It's awful. And, where does it really even go from here? Like, nowhere, really.
I mean, like, this is the thing to me. What makes Doran so interesting is that, like, yes, he is completely crushed by his brother's fucking death, and it's awful for him. But he's not going to throw away his city or his people to, quote unquote, in an attempt to avenge him.
Sure.
He's playing the long game. He's trying to think of the bigger picture. He's conspiring with Magister Illyrio and Varys to put somebody else into the throne that's more suitable and better for his people's interests. And they scratch the surface of this ever so slightly in the show. I mean, like, remind me, is there anything... There's nothing really definitively hinted at here. It's more just like, if you know what's going on, you understand what a few scenes more.
Sure, but I think it comes across more as just he's just a tired old man who just doesn't want the hassle. Whereas in the book, as you say, like, he's planning to wed his eldest son off to Daenerys or something like that. I think
the finals... Well, yeah, I mean, obviously that's removed. I think the final scene or the confrontation with Jaime makes clear that he's got bigger plans in mind, like the way he's like to King Tommen. It's like he's not actually Tommen. There is a bigger plan in mind.
But I think maybe, like you said, I think they saw the reaction to Dorne and were like,
and just said nope.
Just cut him and then they do the same.
The reason why there's a reaction to Dorne is that he just comes across like a tired old man. Like he should be. It should be clear what they're doing. It should be clear that he and Varys are on something. And maybe you can say they got lucky. Maybe the magic just wasn't there with Dorne, and then they would have been stuck with them afterwards if they teased it out too much. But
I just think they were too scared. What a
disaster.
Because, like I said, there are a lot of characters that come with Dorne. I think they were just scared to add that many. Because, like, his daughter Arianne is missing here. They basically give her character to Ilaria, who's already appeared. I guess that makes sense, because what else is she going to do? But in the book, that comes across far more as, from her point of view, her father is being this tired old man, and she's frustrated. But then when it ultimately doesn't go her way, he does sort of give those hints of, no, you just don't understand what I'm doing. And just none of that is here, and we just get a man sitting staring off at the gardens, and he lets them go, and Ilaria poisons Marcella. And maybe the only nice point is, Jaime getting his one moment with one of his children, and then she immediately fucking dies. That's kind of
which
sad,
even for the show feels a little too on point. This is one of the worst storylines they've ever done. Fuck it. It's dumb. It's bad.
It really is.
And we don't have to talk about it again, basically.
Yes. Speaking of, I guess, bad storylines, I don't know. Sansa weds Ramsay this season. So we spoke about how Sansa's finally making some decisions. They're not great decisions generally, though. She refuses to go with Brienne when they bump into each other by happenstance. She's not to know, but if you track the number of decisions Sansa makes against which ones would ultimately end up being good ones, it's not in her favour. Littlefinger schemes for her to marry Ramsay Bolton so that he, through her, has the north, and he has the east, and he's also potentially playing them off against Cersei, and a whole bunch of bullshit. He clearly does not understand, or doesn't care, who Ramsay really is, and yes, a major character of the show is horrifically raped constantly by Ramsay. I guess in their defense, they showed some rare restraint and didn't make this scene too graphic, because you just sort of see the close-up of her face and it could have been a hell of a lot worse. But yeah, just a very dark story here for Sansa, where it's not great that almost her entire journey through the show has been just being put through horrific abuse by people. It was Joffrey, and now it's Ramsay.
We've already been there. We've already been here with Sansa. And it stands out a lot more in the context of, again, this did not happen in the books. This is a choice. You can't even make that bullshit excuse. The bullshit excuse isn't even there for them.
Yeah.
What I would say is, in the context, I think in a bubble, the fact that Ramsay rapes Sansa, you have to think about why you're doing that in the show. And I think one of the classic mistakes is that it just becomes like an arc for a female character, which is kind of questionable in the first place. But in the broader context of a show that had its main female character fall in love with her rapist in season 1, that used rape as background noise in season 4, that had its new male lead character unknowingly rape his sister because they didn't understand what consent was in season 4.
Yeah.
They just should have stayed away from rape ever again. I think the shocking part for a lot of people was that after the whole Jaime thing is that are you serious? Like, just stop. Why not just stay away from it? Like, we don't have to. All we needed was a few comments from Sansa saying, you don't know what he does to me, and we would have gotten the fucking idea.
Sure.
It's dumb.
Yeah, and like, you know, they've made a change, because I forget what Sansa's even fucking doing in the book at this point, but it's not Sansa here.
She's still chilling in the Vale.
I thought so, yeah.
In book 6, he's released an episode of book 6. She's still chilling in the Vale in book 6.
Excellent. You know, it's a whole convoluted mess with her friend Jane Paul impersonating Arya, and Theon is the only person that knows it's not Arya, so he's conflicted about saying anything, and then he's forced to help rape Jane Paul in the book, so that's super fucked up. But this whole thing is so great. Like, I understand, hey, what if we put Sansa in this role to just get her back to the action quicker? Fine, makes perfect sense. No one remembers Jane Paul, fine. But the way they handle the actual content here, not good. And just seeing Theon bringing her food and she's just weeping and she's locked up in this room day and night, and
then for it to become even worse, for it to become the closing beat is it becomes Theon's big moment.
Yeah, and like, fuck Theon, quite frankly.
And like, yeah, like Sansa's being active at the end, but like
he
also,
kills Miranda.
There's kind of like this like fucked up morality thing where like Sansa is getting punished morally in the show for not going with Brienne at the start of season 5.
Yeah,
we as like show watchers know she's being an idiot in that decision.
But she can't possibly know that.
I know, but it's like I'm talking about like the show's morality that's like unconscious. It's like it all combined. Like it's if one of these things were going on, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. The fact that they're all going on at the same time and
it's been relentless. Like, you know, she's punished for not telling the truth about Joffrey in season 1. She's punished for sort of snitching on Ned a bit. You know, all these different things. It's like, enough is enough. Like,
in the context of the show, this whole thing is about punishing Cersei. Right as Sansa escapes, her sister is punished for justly killing an awful dude. And just as that happens, Daenerys is absconded with by a group of people we know are rapists. Like, you can maybe get away with one of these things in extreme circumstances. It's just that this show is just... The culture of the show at times is just gross.
Yes.
And when you don't have the stronger stories to, I don't know, distract yourself from it, as awful as that sounds, like, it really stands out more.
Yeah. So the reason Theon and Sansa are able to escape is that Ramsay and the Boltons are busy with the invasion of Stannis. He's finally here, and it does not go well for him. You know, he saved Jon at the end of last season, and he's staying at Castle Black for a while. Melisandre tries to seduce Jon a little bit, and then he just decides, okay, we've got to march on Winterfell, we've got to take it, the weather is turning, I can't stay here for the whole winter, and it just completely unravels for him. His men run away, Ramsay sets fire to the camp in the night, he gives in and burns his daughter, his wife hangs herself, and then when they finally limp to Winterfell and start setting up a siege, the Boltons just massacre them, and Brienne finishes Stannis off, and it's saying farewell to a character that I like an awful lot. I don't think they did right by him necessarily. I know the actor wanted to leave the show, and I guess this was just them granting him his wish. I don't know if he wanted to leave because his material wasn't always great, or if
he didn't like the show.
That raises questions of why did you audition for it, but, you know.
I mean, I think basically the only thing he enjoyed was working with Davos and Melisandre, because the three of them just work together all the time.
Yeah,
but,
and that makes sense, because his scenes with Davos, to the end, are great. Even when it's a position where Stannis is being a prick and Davos is the voice of reason, I think they have such incredible chemistry together and their friendship. And Davos always being the one that can talk him down from stuff. And then when he sends Davos away, he finally does exactly what Melisandre wants, and look what happens. Everything comes apart for him. Yeah,
I think the Stannis story in general was mishandled. As we said in episode 1, Stannis should have been there from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the most mishandled characters, I think, in the grand scheme of things. It becomes easy for fans, critics to just be like, oh, well, that wasn't necessary in the first place. And I can kind of understand that thinking. I think, though, it is every mistake they made is almost redeemed in Stephen Delaney's performance in this final season on the show.
Yeah. Him not liking the show doesn't show through in his performance because he seems like he's been professional as fuck here. Like, he's nailing it.
Yeah, and I think as he's given better and better material in season 5, I mean, this is the season where he gets the best material to really just kind of sink his teeth in and kind of really do a lot of some of my favorite things, which is acting without talking.
Yeah.
I mean, he gets some of the best acting without talking scenes in the history of television, probably.
Yeah, some of him talking to Jon and, like, the looks on his face when Jon says stuff like, I don't want to do this, but it's my duty, and it's like, you can tell Stannis is basically erect at that point, because that's what he's all about. And the scene with Shireen where he's telling her, hey, what are you talking about? You are my daughter, I love you. I did everything to save you from Grayscale. You are a princess. And then for her to quote that back at him when he burns her, it's like, fucking hell. And, you know, there's a very vocal contingent of readers of the book who are like, he would never do this because he is still alive as of the most recent book. And it does seem incredibly out of character for him to do it, but I think he sells it well enough as to how he would get to this point, and like, just and you can see he's not enjoying it by any stretch of the imagination, and just how broken he looks by the time it's all done.
Yeah, and I think after that, I mean, when he shows up to Winterfell, the look on his face as he's informed that the Boltons are marching on him, which was unexpected, given that the Boltons had the position of strength, and just the look on his face as he goes from learning that information to pulling out his sword and slowly marching on. There's a lot of talent on this show, but pretty much no one else in the show had the talent to pull off that scene as well as Stephen Delaney.
Yeah, and just like the Blackwater, he's right at the front, and he survives to the end. Like, his army is massacred, and he is still in the woods limping around. He fights 2 men at once and wins.
I don't know whose idea it is, but the idea of him trying to, like, using his sword as like a cane is like one of those brilliant small moments in this type of like movie or show ever that I've never seen done before. I love that moment so much.
Yeah, for sure. And apparently, you know, when Brienne finally gets her revenge several seasons later, and, you know, by this point I'm like, leave it alone. Stannis was, I think they filmed or had written a whole bunch of lines for Stannis here, but he just nailed it so much that they cut it right down to go on, do your duty, when she asks if he has any last words. And
it's just a perfect end for Stannis.
Yeah, it's so good. And, you know, it bums me out that he will never meet like a Daenerys Targaryen or something like that, because I've always thought those two are just complete opposites and potentially destined to meet in the middle, but it's never going to happen. And yeah, he was great. And, you know, for all we know, George R. R. Martin is planning to have all of this happen in this next book, but for now he is alive and I'm grateful for that. But yeah, the acting performance is amazing.
If you're going to go out, this is how you go out as an actor on a show, as far as I'm concerned. It was really just a thing of beauty. And like I said, for a very maligned character, for a very unflashy performance, I think he got redeemed in the end, at least. And I would say his performance in season 5 is one of the best season-long performances on the show. Very few stand out to me that compare, besides maybe Tyrion in season 1 and 2, Jaime in season 3, and I don't know about anything else. Maybe Arya in season 1.
Tywin in, I don't know.
Tywin in 4, probably.
Yeah,
Tywin,
maybe. Yeah.
Or maybe 3 or 4. That's when he gets the most to do.
Yeah.
But they're just, it doesn't get much better acting wise in the show than Stephen Delaney does his final season.
Indeed. And I mentioned, you know, him speaking to Jon. Jon Snow's arc here it's a lot, and it culminates in his death, which was quite a surprise to me watching it live for the first time, and I was stunned that this hadn't leaked out, because...
Oh, you didn't know?
I didn't know at all when I watched it.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, because, I mean, you know, so many people didn't know about Ned when that happened. I'd heard about that, but I guess I'd heard about it because of the show, and I am actually impressed at how few details have leaked from, or maybe in just my sphere of social media or whatever. I've not seen many, if any, Game of Thrones spoilers from the books coming out, so I watched this scene with him getting stabbed to death out of nowhere to close the season, and I was like, what the fuck?
Wow.
We can talk about how he gets to getting stabbed in a second, I guess, but yeah, just that's your sort of big headline here, is Jon Snow is dead.
Yeah.
Killing Ned says nobody's safe, but you kind of figure Tyrion, Daenerys, and Jon are safe, but here Jon goes, and it was brutal and sudden, and they use Benjen's name to get him there, and Ollie is the last one to stab him, and he just dies alone in the snow, and yeah, I was completely blown away. Had you read all the books by this point?
Yeah, I'd read all the books. I knew it was coming. The way it was written in the books, to me, because there's no visual component, obviously, it seemed inherently obvious that he was not actually dead, just because you're like, it's Jon fucking Snow. Like, it wasn't even the final chapter of the book.
No, it wasn't that Varys killing Kevin Lannister.
Kevin Lannister and Pycelle. Really just... Well, Varys disappears in books 4 and 5. He does not go off with Tyrion. So, after the killing of Tywin. So, that was, like, the big moment there in the books. But huge. Here, it's... they try to make it as definitive as possible that Jon Snow is dead. Yeah,
Barack Obama asked the writer, "Is he actually dead?" And the guy lied to the president, the sitting president at the time, and said, "Yeah, he's dead."
Yeah, I think that's what we should talk about first. One, when you first saw this happen, what was your first instinct? Is Jon Snow dead or alive?
We've seen people come back to life. We've seen it in this season. The Mountain is back, by the by. But then, I remember it angered me a little bit, because I was like, my first thought was, what was the point in teasing all this stuff about his parentage if, we can find out later, let's say he is still dead. But what does it matter if he's dead? And just all of these stories that he had, I was like, well, what's the point? And then I thought, well, that's something George R.R. Martin would do, because... he did that by killing Joffrey before anyone could get their revenge on him. He killed Ned. That was the big first Game of Thrones surprise. So stuff like that it sort of went round and round in my head. And, whether I thought, oh, he's definitely coming back or not, I don't really remember. I guess you could never rule that out. But I just remember I was shocked, and then I was kind of pissed off at all these storylines that I figured, well, I'm not going to get these resolved now. And then, probably, I think the world spent, like, a year being like, well, I guess Jon Snow's probably going to come back. So I guess by that time I'd subsided into that. But, in the moment, shock and then anger. Yeah,
they made the decision to really do their best to convince people that Jon Snow was actually dead in the show. And the lengths they went to were impressive, because... they had leaked years earlier that there was a clause in Kit Harington's contract that he was not allowed to cut his hair while he was still a cast member of the show. They decided that his hair was too essential to his character to cut it. So they had Kit Harington a month before the season came out with shorter hair, roaming around doing interviews. And the speculation immediately started about that. And then they tried to claim... I think they even possibly brought back Tywin for the funeral scene in Season 1, just so they can get away with including Kit Harington in early, cast. It's like, oh, well, he's going to be dead body, just like Charles Dance was. How Charles Dance is technically a member of the Season 5 main cast because his body was in it for one episode.
Yep.
I'm convinced they did that just to head off this.
That makes a lot of sense, yeah.
And then they just... everything they just claimed that he's just going to be a dead body, and that was that. Like I said, the Red Wedding, Ned, all those things seemed shocking in the moment, but made perfect sense also immediately, right?
Yeah.
This was not that. It was it wasn't shocking for me, but it was shocking for people who didn't know about it.
Yeah.
But it did not make sense.
Yeah. The things I was angry about are why it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Those first two things, they were angry because you were invested in those characters, not because, well, wait a second. We've just spent a whole lot of time with a character that's clearly above dying. You can't just, killing him does not make any sense whatsoever.
Now, this removing the rules of television and he's a main character aspect, the actual plot, it does make sense for Ned to die. It does make sense for the Starks to be killed at the Red Wedding.
It's a whole corner of the show's universe that cannot exist without Jon Snow there, as evidenced by the fact that in Season 7, the moment he fucks off and leaves, they do not stay and follow Dolorous Edd around throughout Season 7 at the Wall.
Yeah.
They do not explore the backstory that is of Dolorous Edd. And we all instinctively knew this, and we knew there was no possible way. What were people like Brienne was just going to take over the Wall? You'd have to really stretch yourself to think of something like that as being a possibility. And I didn't mind that they were pretending that he's dead. It really doesn't matter to me. A lot of people were clearly offended by this idea that the show was saying he's dead. And I don't know. I mean, I guess this is kind of a straw man thing. But, it just seems kind of stupid to be that insulted by it. It's he's obviously dead. He's obviously dead. He's obviously dead. He's obviously dead. Who cares if they're saying he's dead? I'm sorry, he's obviously not dead. like, Melisandre was right there. We all knew what was going to happen. It was just a question of how and when.
Yeah, her showing up last minute is very...
I mean, like, all they had to do was... I mean, I don't even know if they did that to give fans comfort, but I thought they kind of telegraphed it too much by putting her there.
Yeah, and maybe if she'd showed up first episode of next season, then it hides it better. And I remember, like, you know, Kit Harington's been spotted at the set, but you know, maybe he's just visiting friends. It's like,
it was exhausting hearing about this for a year, if anything.
Yeah, I'd stopped caring by the time it came around.
Yeah,
it's just in the moment.
I mean, my only concern was that they were not going to resurrect him until the end of season 6.
Yeah.
Which seemed at this point, based on the pacing at this point, it seemed a legit possibility. Regardless of that aspect of it, of the cultural moment aspect of it, which I think was not nearly as big as the Red Wedding or...
No, not at all. Those were like memes and language that was just in the vernacular.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like Ned getting beheaded and the Red Wedding were just huge.
Do we think that this story, because this is where Jon kind of firmly becomes the main character of the show.
He does.
As King's Landing, as we know it, fades away.
Mm-hmm.
How is Jon's first season as the main character of Game of Thrones?
A mixed bag. I mean, he refuses this offer from Stannis to become Jon Stark, and he talks about how that's all he's ever wanted. He mercy kills Mance Rayder, who has been the closest thing he had to a father, I guess, since Ned. By the way, by Mance Rayder, sucks that you've been jettisoned when... Again,
I'll have more to say on that in a second.
Okay. He turns down Melisandre because he said he still loves Ygritte, and she's saying she's dead. Yeah, but I still love her. He's voted Lord Commander against his wishes, sort of, and the first thing he does, other than making his greatest nemesis, Alistair Thorne, First Ranger, he goes to Hardhome to bring all the wildlings back and let them through the wall, and this is why the Night's Watch stab him to death. Do we want to talk about Hardhome here?
Sure, let's talk about Hardhome.
Okay, because you were ahead of me in terms of the rewatch, and in my head, Hardhome had to be its own talking point, just like the big episodes in the past were. In my head, the entire episode pretty much was all in Hardhome, and I think they probably should have made the whole episode in Hardhome, because everything until they get to Hardhome is kind of boring. But then Hardhome itself, I think, is really, really good. The scale of it, the numbers, like the zombie horde hitting the gates, the zombies like pouring over the whites pouring over the cliff.
We're not getting into the nuances.
Sure.
They're all zombies. We don't have time.
Sure, the zombie children are terrifying.
Also, I don't understand it.
Sure. And then, you've got the White Walkers on the cliffs, and their sort of comparatively small number compared to all of these zombies is terrifying in its own way, I think. And, we finally get not finally, we've seen White Walkers before, but, a major character duels a White Walker, and I know you have some thoughts on this, but, Jon kills a White Walker, and then the Night King, who, I guess he got named via promotional material, because they don't really say his name this season, certainly, but, yeah, he shows up, and he raises all the dead, and I love that they cut the sound out, as Jon and the survivors are sailing away, and the sound is just gone. And it's really, really well done. I think it's pretty good action. I don't actually know her name. There's a female wildling here who debuts and dies in this episode. And I think she must have had the time of her fucking life, because she got to give this really good speech when Jon is trying to recruit the wildlings. She gets to do some bow stuff. She gets to, have the little scene with Jon about, you have to go because... Are your men going to let my children through if you're not there?
That's a great line.
She gets to have the thing with the zombie... she gets to be killed by the zombie children. And then she gets to put on the zombie makeup herself. And I think it's really, really well done. And I kind of wish they had fleshed this out a bit more and let it breathe. And potentially done a full episode here in Hardhome with even more of Jon and Tormund trying to talk to the wildlings or something. But then everything here is good, and maybe it gets worse if you stretch it out.
So much like the Red Wedding, a lot of people were saying, "Oh, the Red Wedding should have been its own episode." Blah blah blah. That was a big Sepinwall talking point for a long time that really annoyed me. A key difference between this episode and the Red Wedding and Watchers on the Wall and Blackwater is that we didn't know it was coming.
Sure.
And you can't have an old episode of everyone just sitting around talking and then you become impatient because you know something must be coming, but you don't know what. So it's not a slow build to something. It just becomes like a waiting game, and you become impatient with everything else. And it'd be an excellent metaphor for seasons 5 and 6 of the show. Don't get me wrong. But I don't know. I think we're already feeling that feeling enough in the bigger picture. I don't know if we need to feel it so much in the micro of an individual episode. That being said, I have a couple nitpicks about the fight scene, but I think it's probably one of the best action scenes overall that they've ever done, and almost makes up for Jorah's cosplaying doing that. Oh man, we gotta especially a compilation of Jorah doing his best to fight is the saddest thing in the world. I think they also probably do one of the most clever cost-cutting measures since they have just knocked Tyrion out and don't show us a battle in season 1, which is they have everyone hide. They close the gate as a way of keeping them out, and then leaving so many wildlings to slaughter, which you're so distracted by that moment that they feel necessary to do that you don't even mind that you just got deprived of this whole battle scene that was clearly erupting in that moment.
Let's talk about the White Walker. Come on.
Yeah. So Matt and I, we got into it a little bit on this.
We had a lot of
Did you rewatch it?
I did twice this morning. I still disagree with you.
Oh, you're out of your mind. Anyway,
most likely.
So they're all arguing over that, and the big thing is that the Thenn is being an annoying asshole because everyone hates Thenns, and Thenns are just inherently annoying assholes. It comes down to one of the White Walkers, or it doesn't come down to, but a White Walker goes into the house where Jon accidentally left the dragon glass. Jon and the Thenn go in there. The Thenn has a moment of maturity and recognizes Jon's got to find the dragon glass. Also, a little bit of that macho Thenn pride gets the better of him. He's like, I can take this White Walker.
Dies
or at least, he swings the slowest moving weapon around I have ever seen. There is no way this Thenn's been surviving all these years. He is terrible with this giant axe. And the White Walker gracefully avoids him a couple moves and then just easily stabs him. Puts forth no effort whatsoever to do this.
He smashes his weapon.
Yes.
This is a thing we see every time a White Walker sword touches a human sword.
Re-establishing that, very important. Yes. So then it comes down to Jon and this White Walker. Jon is also hopelessly mismatched against this White Walker. And the White Walker, after just establishing that he'll just easily stab somebody after a couple of futile attempts, decides, no, I'm going to play with my food, and uses his hands to just toss Jon around a couple times for no reason whatsoever, just to delay this a little bit.
I don't understand what's wrong with this. They are sentient things. Like, they think, they are shocked when things happen. Like, why wouldn't they have the same sort of pitfalls that a human would? I'm not saying the White Walker isn't dumb for doing this, but I don't think it's like...
Dumb is boring. Why choose to make the character dumb?
I don't know if he's necessarily dumb. I don't think he doesn't.
You just said it's dumb.
I'm saying
that was your word.
I'm saying by your premise, he's being stupid for not just stabbing Jon in the back while he's leaning down, grabbing the dragon glass. I don't think he's that dumb, personally. Like, he grabs him and throws him backward. He goes to stab him. Jon moves.
He creates more space between him and his enemy.
He throws him down
it's more effort to pick him up and throw him away than to just, trip and fall over and accidentally stab him.
They also establish that they're, superhumanly strong. There's that. We didn't know that until now.
I'm all for establishing that. Have him swing his sword, it gets stuck in the wall, or it slips from his hand, even.
Honestly, the only one that I vaguely agree with you on is when Jon is at first reaching in to get that dragon glass, and it grabs him by the scruff of the neck and throws him across the room.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, but the rest of it, Jon crawls away. He goes.
I don't mind the rest of it. That's
it's just that one moment.
Stupidest fucking thing in the world.
I guess. It didn't bother me when I watched it.
Because his sword is in the other hand. It is more effort. He doesn't have to bend down if he just stabs him. And I think if you're going to go with the 7 seasons of these people are not characters, they're just ruthless killing machines. They have no...
That's the thing. We don't know that.
Okay. So
that's the
what we're going to do is, in the season 8 episode, when it's revealed that they are still just zombies
I'm sure they are, but
no
we don't
feelings,
know that now.
I'm going to tell you you're an idiot for arguing about this.
They clearly have higher intelligence.
Apparently not.
No, but they're not animals. The zombie, the whites, the animals.
I know.
The zombies are animals.
But it's so stupid though and unnecessary. I
don't
know
Victory has defeated them.
Oh, shut the fuck up.
No, but that moment when Jon blocks the sword and it's huh? And then he kills him. And then the knight...
Great moment.
Yeah.
Everything else about this fight is amazing.
I just think that is the same
the
thing.
moment
Like, they're
where
so
Jon
used to
decides-
just mowing through people, and here's someone...
That's my point, though, which is why it's not stupid that he doesn't try to fight back against the Thenn. He lets the Thenn just tire himself out instantly because apparently he's a terrible fighter that somehow survived in the wild for the last 40 years. It's stupid that he puts forth more effort to throw him around than to just stab him. It's not that hard to think these things through or to cut out a poorly thought out sequence of 5 seconds.
Okay.
It's stupid.
All right. The rest of that scene, though.
The rest of that scene is great.
I like the giant running off and just being like, fuck this, and just running through the water.
Yeah. Very reminiscent of the trees in Lord of the Rings, Two Towers.
Sure.
Also, I mean, I think probably my favorite moment is as the wildlings are kind of descending into chaos, running away. And a female wildling tells Jon, convinces him to go back. Jon takes out his sword, says, "Night's Watch with me," and they all instantly follow him into death. I thought was really well done. Great use of juxtaposition.
And he even comments on it in his final episode of the season, like on the first Lord of the Night's Watch, to sacrifice brothers to save wildlings, because he got some of the Night's Watch killed here.
Right.
It was great.
I think the only other thing that's stupid is... Well, so the backstory in that female wildling character is that it was originally written as a man, and something happened, and she ended up in the role, and she was electric in the role, and I guess they didn't recognize that in time.
Yeah.
And then decided to have her killed because she's reminded of children, and she's a woman, and she decides, I'm not fighting back anymore. Not a popular scene.
I took it more as like she just can't bring herself to attack children. Rather than, or maybe some of these children are hers. I don't know, but
they're not. I don't think. Not a popular scene among female television critics, from what I remember, from what I saw.
And that's justifiable.
Just throwing it out there.
So, I mean, you asked me, and I kind of ignored your question a little bit, but about Jon in his first season as the de facto protagonist of the whole show. Some other stuff they do here, they kind of deliberately ignore some things he did in the book where he does some very controversial things. Like, some of it I think is because it's convoluted, but Sam doesn't want to be a maester in the book. He wanted to be one when he was a kid, and his father basically tortured him out of that idea. So he doesn't want to go do that. Jon sends him away against his will, and not only does he do that, he switches Gilly's baby for Mance Rayder's child because he is scared that Melisandre is going to burn it. And we get this whole thing with the baby is crying day and night and Gilly can't make it stop, and the horrible moment when you realise it's not her baby, that's why. And
also, Mance Rayder's still alive in the books.
Indeed. Hopefully.
Also has a baby.
Yes, and a wife, who is great.
A wife.
And her sister likes Jon? I don't know. Yeah, that's not great. I thought there was something else as well where they took it out, where Jon makes some somewhat controversial decisions here beyond, because I mean we side with him of him saving the wildlings, but the Night's Watch don't. But then he does some stuff I remember that is very like, don't know about that, Jon. But he's arguably making sort of the big picture right choice, but being a bit dickish in the process. But yeah, it's, I mean, he gets to have that triumphant win over the White Walker, I guess, and the Night King sort of looks at him sort of like, I have noticed you. So it's all telegraphing all of that. The more we talk about this, the more stupid I feel for not immediately thinking, oh, of course Jon's going to come back. But yeah, I think Kit Harington is... I think nowadays he is much better at it. I don't know if this season was tremendously successful with him as the de facto hero.
I think if you told me in season 1, I did not dislike Jon or Kit Harington in season 1, but I think if you told me he would eventually become the lead character in the show, which I guess in my very naive way did not immediately understand was obviously going to happen.
Yeah. That
the poor little orphan boy was the chosen one character.
The ice of the fire and ice.
Yeah, right. I would have thought, ooh, that sounds terrible. Let's avoid that at all costs.
Yeah.
By this point, I was growing into the idea, and then I think he takes the leap in 6 and 7 and in terms of embracing the role a little bit in terms of, I mean, both as a character but also as an actor. I think he does a pretty good job.
He was always like a great little secondary protagonist that is off to the side, and I didn't think at this point he was quite ready to be the protagonist, and I think he does get there. So those are the big things. You'll notice we didn't talk about Daenerys this season because Marine is boring as fuck. There are some good moments, though. Do you want to talk about Barristan Selmy?
So the show has this philosophy from interviews I read where they think they need a big moment at the end of episode 4. I forget why. They think it's like a dramatic point. I mean, I think it's where Tyrion gets arrested in season 1, for example. I'm sure other things happened in previous and more recent episode 4s.
Sure.
They thought they needed this big moment. They took a look around to see who was disposable, and they decided to kill Varys and Selmy in this scene. So the concept what's going on with Dany here is that the Sons of the Harpy have become this semi-righteous but populist group funded by the elites that are just
stabbing people,
and they are this phantom menace in Marine. We don't know who they are. We never really find out who they are, for the most part.
No, actually, his done for being revealed as not their leader was actually quite a shock, but it's just lost in the everything else going on. Because
no one cared about him either. Because it was Marine.
Sure.
The show's bad at making us care about non-white people. And so what they do is they construct the scene where... Oh, so their main thing that's established very early on in the season is that they're trying to kill the Unsullied. And it looks like they've cornered Grey Worm and some Unsullied. And they are mostly successful at killing them. Because as quickly established, by the way, in the last season, the Unsullied are not really great at fighting.
It really fucking sucks. They do this all the time. They're like, oh, no one can defeat this amazing force. Yeah. And then they get fucking owned. They've done it constantly. Like, oh, we have no men. Suddenly you have loads of men. Oh, they're not enough men. And the Unsullied, like, an unstoppable army. Every fucking opportunity they get owned.
Yeah. One of my closest family members who also watches it and reads all the books and all that really complains about the Sons of the Harpy and Ramsay becoming like supervillains in terms of effectiveness in this season. Like Ramsay with 20 men basically destroying any military chance Stannis has of winning a battle, and the Sons of the Harpy wiping out the Unsullied, ruthless killing machines, and the Sons of the Harpy are kind of just like guys in semi-intimidating masks.
Yeah, like they go in for like a guerrilla warfare type thing. Yeah, it just comes across as the Unsullied being ineffective, though, because we haven't seen them actually win anything really. They just their sheer numbers intimidates Dany into some victories.
And like also fighting with spears seems really inefficient.
It does, but hey.
Anyway, so the idea is that Barristan, after just conveniently having one of his biggest scenes in the show, coincidentally, is put into a life-threatening situation where he decides to try to save what's left of the Unsullied. It's pretty much just Grey Worm by this point. And he valiantly slays almost all of them before being taken down. He's almost also had his throat cut, but Grey Worm saves it. I would say I have a slight confession to make. The first 4 episodes of Season 5 leaked out early when they happened.
I remember that. Yeah.
And I watched all 4 immediately. And I know.
Mike.
I know. The FBI is descending upon me now after hearing this. Someone who was greatly invested in Barristan Selmy, the character in the book and in the show, was left with him presumably dying in Grey Worm's arms and had to wait an extra 4 weeks to find out what happened there. A punishment fitting, I guess, for my crimes. Intellectual property doesn't exist. Anyway, I thought this was just one of the stupidest deaths the show's done. I like a clear example of just thinking, death is bad. People care about death. Let's kill a character that we probably can get away with killing without it affecting anything, just so we have the shock of death. And then it basically means nothing. Dany is sad for a scene.
Grey Worm is a bit sad about it, but we're not really instructed to care much about Grey Worm, so what does that mean? This is what they do. They kill men and they rape women whenever they need some kind of big shocking blow to be dealt to the good guys.
It really starts. The only thing I could think of was they probably wisely killed off Master Aemon before the actor died, because Peter Vaughan just seemed like he was going to die at any second based on the way he was moving. I thought they were like legitimately just like we should kill off all the old people in the show before they die in real life. That was the only thing that was going through my head, is possibly explaining any of this. Yeah. I don't know. I'm still very angry about this.
I think Barristan would have been great with Tyrion, and that little group they were slowly building was getting better. But
it's not the biggest deal in the world, because the show could go on without him. The show did not need him. The show, in a lot of ways, was not greatly affected by his presence, but he was, I think, an important connection to the past.
And also, when this whole corner of the world is generally quite boring, having any kind of entertaining character helps.
Another good actor that they're throwing away. I just don't like it. I don't like how quick and meaningless it became. Yeah. It's not good.
For sure.
Speaking of deaths that don't happen in the book, Barristan, by the way, becomes a point of view character in book 5.
Yeah.
Like, we learn a lot more about him. He's a very interesting person.
Yeah.
He's seen a lot of shit. If you read his Game of Thrones wiki, I mean, like, this dude's been through some shit. They also decide to kill off Mance Rayder, taking away. I mean, the best actors in this show were dying off in this season left and right. It was incredible. I mean, people wisely, I think, decided that this was clearly not a fake out and that he clearly was dead. I thought there was just just enough on screen to open up the possibility that they did what they did in the books, which was
it's the Lord of Bones, and Melisandre's made him look like Mance, and
I thought he and Tormund looked at each other just enough that they switched it with Tormund.
Mance is gone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, I was saying, as someone who knew what happened in the books, I thought they left enough room open in season 5 to open up that possibility. Obviously, that did not come to pass. Mance dies. This one makes a little bit more sense to me than killing off Barristan. It feels kind of like closing off a storyline, but it was a storyline that they did not give nearly enough time to. No. And again, just the show's total dismissal of the wildlings' cause as legitimate in any way seems really stupid. It kind of makes sense when they think that their next show about what if slavery never ended makes a lot more sense in perspective when you realize how unwilling they are to recognize the justness.
Like, it's all told through Jon, who is not one of them, whereas Mance is their spokesman, so yeah.
Right. I fucking hate that too. I think, once again, Mance Rayder, one of the more interesting characters. I think embodies a lot of what what makes the world interesting, and they just kind of destroyed here. Blah, 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 blah.
House of Black and White is dull. Arya gets
we can touch on next episode. I feel like
she murders the fuck out of Meryn Trant. It's very, very violent.
It is gruesome.
Yes,
that is a gruesome murder. Wow. I didn't think it was possible to make me feel bad for that man, but that was gruesome.
And they really pour it on heavy with like his activities before that, with his pedophilic tendencies. It's like maybe the audience have forgotten this guy's not nice. Let's make him just out of nowhere be a pedophile.
Didn't he just look not nice enough to?
I know, right?
They cast Adewale Akunye Agbaje, in this thankless 2-3 episode slaver role.
Yes.
I mean, what a waste of a great actor there.
All the black people are pirates and slaves, pretty much.
I mean, like, that was just baffling what they did with that he was wasted in such a role there, given how good of an actor he is.
Yeah.
We got to see Mace Tyrell sing, which probably is one of the most important scenes in the entire show. I think it's really quite wonderful. Mark Gatiss' response to it is wonderful.
Obviously, everything Mark Gatiss does is wonderful.
Except when making television shows. I don't even necessarily feel that way. I just felt like saying it.
Okay.
Some people just want to watch the world burn, man.
Of course.
I think there's an entire... we talk about Game of Thrones spinoffs. I think the world wants to see Roger Ashton Griffiths sing. And I think we can have an entire spinoff based around this idea.
Of course. We had a whole season without Bran Stark and no one batted a fucking eyelid. I think that's incredibly telling.
Jeremy Renner 2018 blockbuster theory, which is that you can simply remove Jeremy Renner from previously scheduled appearances in blockbusters. No one will notice, no one will care, no one will say anything about it.
Now, I get the sense you don't give a shit about this, based on knowing you, but we get our first major dragon action. Like, Drogon shows up and saves Daenerys, burns a lot of people, flies, all of the stuff.
And the Sons of the Harpy are able to cause untold damage against him somehow.
Indeed.
The Sons of the... It's a bunch of people in mass carrying sticks.
Yes. That sucks. But I mean, from the moment those dragon eggs are shown in season 1, this is what people were waiting for, and they finally got it.
Yeah.
In comparison to the drama you get in the show, this is minuscule, but it is an exciting moment when that does happen for the first time.
It follows one of the worst staged action scenes from top to bottom. With, I mean, I know I beat on Jorah a lot. Jorah's really bad. I don't know what happened.
I do like him throwing that spear, though.
There's an oral history to what happened to one of the greatest knights in Westerosi just not being able to fight.
Well, they cast Ian Glenn is what they did.
And did not think to hire a stunt actor. Like, I hope the story is like the stunt actor just kept getting drunk and kept not showing up to work.
Well, he was just like, I'm only doing the show if I do my stunts. But you're not very good at them.
Forced Ian Glenn to finally just do it himself. But also just like, when they're all just standing around in a circle... Ugh. And it's just like them awkwardly fighting. Like, it's so bad. I mean, like, people don't remember any of this because it's the Drogon episode, but it is so bad. And it just followed the Hardhome episode, the episode before. I mean, what happened?
I don't know.
Anyway.
That's season 5. A lot happens, but also, I don't know, it's lacking.
It's the first season where we spent more time dumping on it, for sure.
That is definitely true. But still, a lot of really great moments here. It's just, I mean, I can't keep saying it. Great moments, bad stuff happens in between. There you go.
Yeah.
That's season 5.
I think at this point, you're so invested in the show, it would take something extreme for you or I to stop watching it.
Of course. I mean,
I've had friends that said that, particularly it was a female friend who said the Cersei Walk of Shame was just the final straw and she was done.
I could see that. It was incredibly uncomfortable.
But I think for the most part, you're hooked in. And
I mean, the hype machine on Game of Thrones at this point is ungodly. Like, it's insane. So.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, the show knows and the viewers know, okay, Dany and the zombies are coming, and if you want to see it, you have to keep watching.
Yeah, that is basically how they make the show now.
And they know this, and we know this, and there's nothing any of us can do to stop it.
No. Well, on we march. Like, allegedly the army of the dead are marching towards the wall. And so next week we'll do season 6, and I remember not a huge amount. The Battle of the Bastards, Jon's back to life.
Hey, we get all these exciting storylines we've talked about here. You get to see the conclusion of them, but without all the great actors that they killed off in season 5.
Season 5, part 2, next week. Thank you, enter therealworld.com, Mike and Matt on SoundCloud. This has been the Wheel Breakers. Goodbye.
And who are you, the power